I didn't know that you needed a degree to learn how to adjust mics. All right. I thought I had this idealistic life in a refugee camp in Tanzania. I played soccer with my friends using a balloon wrapped with rubber bands. I picked mangoes off the mango trees, and I climbed the trees after having been told by my parents not to. But at the age of 2, my biological mother died due to a lack of medical treatment within the refugee camp. I remember the day of the funeral. Everyone around me was crying. They were in pain, they were in agony, and they were in sorrow. But for some reason, I wasn't crying. I was confused. My mother, the person who had given birth to me and who had brought me in this world, was gone. For me, it was more of a perplexing event, and to this day, I still haven't understood as to what took place. In 2008, the United States government gives my parents an opportunity to move to this country on a refugee status. Our journey to America included a flight from Tanzania to Nairobi, Kenya, from Nairobi, Kenya to Western Europe, from Western Europe to New York City, and then from New York City to Des Moines, Iowa. Pretty long. After stepping out of the airport, I noticed rice falling from the skies. It was cold, and it was wet, and it reached all the way up to my knees. After living here for a while, I learned that this is just a natural phenomenon that takes place once a season, every single year. So after having arrived in Des Moines, I started 2nd grade at South Union Elementary on the south side of Des Moines. See, starting school for me was a bit hard. I would go and play with my friends in the playground, yet I couldn't communicate with them. I would try to speak to my teacher, but I had to point at pictures or point at things in order to try to let her know what is it that I was trying to ask or that I needed. And see, the reason for this is because I didn't know the language. I didn't even know how to say hi. I was in a space where I had to learn a language that was foreign to my Kirundi tongue, a language that was foreign to my Swahili tongue. As much as this was difficult and was a challenge, I made it a goal to make sure that I could learn the language and pick it up as soon as possible. After 4th grade, my EL teacher told me, "You no longer have to be in EL class." And there I knew that I had accomplished something. So come around 6th grade, I'm identified as gifted and talented within mathematics. And due to this identification, I'm given an opportunity to attend Prep Academy at Central Academy in 7th grade. I take upon this opportunity, and Prep Academy is a program for high-performing students who are coming from an underrepresented and underserved background. Starting Central Academy for me was a bit difficult. The curriculum was fast. It was going at a pace that I wasn't used to, especially as a 7th grader. Having to have homework every single day, and then having to go to my parents who couldn't help me with the work because they didn't know the language. Even though that was a difficult part of my 7th grade year, I had attended this after-school program called CFUM, Children and Family Urban Movement, in elementary. And because of the adults there, they were able to give me the support that I needed to do well. And I also had the expectation of my parents. I remember my dad telling me, "Robert, you're going to have to go to college. I can't pay for it, and I won't be able to. So you need to work hard and find someone else who can." And so in a way, that was an expectation and something that kept me going. And I succeeded 7th grade Prep Academy and went on to 8th grade. The first day of Central Academy in 8th grade, as I entered the class, I noticed that I was going from a class where I was one of 20-something students of color to one of 5. And there I knew that this was going to be interesting and a bit different and somewhat difficult. Freshman year comes around, I'm attending North High School. And see, walking through the hallways of North High School, I can think about any continent on the planet, and almost about any country on the planet, and I could find a kid from that place. And walking the hallways of North, I felt comfortable, I felt at home. Robert can just be Robert at North. I can be whoever I am. And I didn't have to think twice about the way that I walked. I didn't have to think twice about how I dressed. I didn't have to think twice about how I talked. But then I would have to go to Central Academy and walk into the hallways of Central Academy. I sort of had this double consciousness. This whole thing of having to think about, well, I have to navigate a little bit differently in these hallways that I'm walking in. I have to talk a little bit different in order to fit into the space that I was in. Central Academy felt different. It felt foreign to who I was. I'm sitting in in a class at Central Academy freshman year, and a student says, "I don't like to go to Roosevelt because of all the ghetto black students." Now, remember, this is a class where I'm one of a few students of color. I could literally count with these fingers of mine of how many students of color were in that class. Hearing this from my own classmate made me cringe. It gave me pain, and it made me sad, and it even offended me. But for some reason, I didn't speak up. I didn't say anything to them because I was in a space where I didn't feel okay to speak up and say something and confront them on what they had said. As the junior year started, I hear about this group called CORE, Community of Racial Equity, which is a student-led group whose purpose is to unite strong leaders to collaborate and support students of color in college-level courses. At this time, CORE was operating at Roosevelt, so I went and attended one of their meetings. And I remember walking to the classroom, and I noticed how the chairs and the desks were sitting in a circle, and the students were facing each other. And they were talking with each other about the visions and the goals that they had to be able to change the conversation of race within their schools as it pertained to education and our society. Being in this space, I felt comfortable. I felt at home. I felt like I was a part of a community, a part of a family. And just seeing the goals that they had and the vision that they had, I was empowered. And I was also inspired to start CORE at North. After the presidential election, as I'm sitting in one of my classes, again at Central Academy, we watch an episode of Blackish, a show that depicts the way in which a black family navigates in white suburbia America. And on this episode, they were talking about the different reactions that people had to the presidential election. After watching the episode, my teacher stands in front of the class, and she looks at me, and she points, and she says, "You're like the token black guy." Now, let me remind you again, this is a class where I'm one of probably 4 or 5 students of color, and the rest are not. After having heard this, I looked at another student of color, and we didn't really say anything to each other. We just looked in each other's eyes, and in some way we communicated to each other of, did she really just say that? She really did just say that. And the teacher just walked out and came back like as if nothing had happened. Now, being a part of CORE and having been empowered, having had the confidence that I've gained, I felt empowered, I felt inspired to approach the teacher and speak to her about the events and the different experiences that I had at Central Academy. After speaking to them, they acknowledged that they were wrong for what they had said, and that they would try to be a better person, and that they would be more careful about the words and actions that they would say and do in the classroom and the ways in which it would affect their students, especially their students of color. After speaking to them, I saw her change the way in which she goes about addressing the conversation of race and education in our society. See, my story is one of challenges. It's a journey. It's like being on a bridge and having to go on different checkpoints. And at each checkpoint, I have to experience new things, new struggles, and new challenges. And throughout all these challenges that I've gone through, I've learned that I was born an African, but became black in America. But in spite of this struggle of race, of language, and all the different challenges that I've experienced, I learned that in spite of all of this, I can still navigate, I can still thrive, and succeed within the space in which I occupy. Thank you, everyone.